going where your audience is the number one most important thing. Massively, our success has been from Reddit and our subreddit and comments that I leave versus being on Diamond Hands, which was that documentary. And also, I think I was on Fox Business a few times. I don't think those led to any downloads. It just makes good B-roll.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. Always do your own research and consult with a professional before making any financial decisions.
Welcome back to Horizons Podcast, where we get marketers to share their secrets with the rest of us. I'm here with Kevin Su. Kevin is famous for making over $8 million on Reddit's Wall Street Bets before he quit his job at YouTube and started a stock market super app. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a bit about your journey from big company to starting a company again?
Yeah, sure. I mean, how far back do you want to go? This is technically my third startup.
Okay, so I know Fan Hero is
Fan
one
Hero,
of them.
Yep.
Where did
that was
Fan
my
Hero
first.
come from?
Fan Hero was started in 2013, and it was basically these online fan clubs for creators. I don't even think the term creator economy was even a thing yet. And, it actually just came from what I spent all my time doing, which was watching YouTube and a little bit of Twitch back then too. And kind of realizing that a lot of these creators were not making that much money. If the top 1% obviously get brand deals and sponsorships, but the long tail creators were actually struggling. Yet they had these super fans like myself who, they were starting to experiment with like tip jars and subscription services and Kickstarters. And I'm like, hey, why not build something on like a subscription and a merch store and kind of automate the whole back office for these creators, right? So that's what Fan Hero was. I was lucky to start this like right out of college. We were accepted into Y Combinator, so this was like S13, and just an absolute roller coaster of, made every single like first time founder mistake, and ultimately just kind of ended up shutting the company down. We never really found a way to make a profit, but there was a lot of pass through, right? And like major props to Patreon. I think they're the winners in this space. And it's a very hard business because like 95% of it is pass through, right? And so like how do you, even though I say Patreon has created a lot of value in the world, it's hard to kind of take value from that process, right?
That is. And then what was your second startup?
So, well, after I feel like my career has kind of done this kind of sinusoidal like back and forth between like startups and big companies. And so after Fan Hero shut down, I wanted to kind of just be at the epicenter of where I thought the best engineering was happening. And so I ended up at Stripe. I was very fortunate to join Stripe in, I think, late 2015. I think the company was only like 300 people at the time. And yeah, like, the best engineering I've ever seen. And so I was there for about a year and a half, 2 years. And so now you're 2016, 2017, I caught the crypto bug, as millions of others did. I was a big bull on Ethereum and these smart contracts and the ability to kind of program money, right? That just seemed like really interesting to me. And it was like untapped opportunities to kind of explore and again, build something here, right? And so I left my job at Stripe, ended up kind of consulting for a few companies, most notably one called Omise Go, the actual OMG token. One of the few that Vitalik was like personally advising. And so I even like spent like a month out in Bangkok, Thailand, and just kind of really tried to get on ground floor and try to understand like what can Ethereum do, what can these like smart contracts do, right? And my kind of takeaway from that was not too much. Mostly, there were a lot of these ICOs and token offerings back then, right? And NFTs, CryptoKitties, all that stuff was kind of starting. That was kind of interesting, but there wasn't anything too much that I was particularly interested in. And so didn't quite get that startup off the ground, but I still consider that kind of my second, attempt at starting a company. And so that takes you to summer of 2018. And again, I basically had no money. I basically, burned through all my runway and I needed a job again. And so I started applying to a whole bunch of different jobs, and I was very fortunate to have landed at Google and at YouTube. And so I started that journey in 2019. And I call it my good boy year, because like after all of that roller coaster I've been through, right? I just wanted to be a good boy. I just wanted to be a good employee. I wanted to, be a good PM, be a good, employee. And it was great. Like YouTube commerce platform, was growing, and YouTube Premium, and seeing that product take off, like it was a great time, right? And so that was 2019. And then 2020 happened, pandemic happened, Wall Street bets happened, and kind of the rest of the story.
That's incredible. What got you into stock trading?
That's a good question, because actually for most of my life, I was not interested at all. Crypto was interesting actually for the community aspect of it. Like I spent a lot of time on like the cryptocurrency subreddit and ETH trading and Ethereum and all these kind of corners of the internet that I was talking about, meme coins or whatever. And Wall Street bets at the time was still pretty small, right? And it was only, around 2018, 19, I still remember my first post. I remember the first post from Wall Street bets that kind of got me in the first place. It was a guy who literally made, I think, $500,000 by shorting Meta or Facebook back then. It was like this crazy crash on earnings in like 2018 or something like that. And he shorted it and made like I think he turned like 10 or 20K into $500,000 in one day. And that's how I learned about options and puts and all that kind of stuff. And like, it's insanely risky. Like options are kind of crazy. They were invented as this tool to actually hedge your bets, right? So like if you have like, I don't know, like $1 million on the line for some earnings, a lot of finance is about like your expected value and like hedging, right? And so you can't always be 100% on one position. You need something to kind of offset the balance in case. And so that's kind of what hedging generally means. And options were meant for that. But the modern internet trader has kind of morphed and twisted these options into these kind of YOLO bets, essentially. And Wall Street bets was kind of the home for these YOLO bets. People were sharing their screenshots of their like crazy plays and their crazy thesis, whatever. And for the first time ever in my life, I was like, this is fun. For the first time ever, finance was what felt fun and it felt internet native versus like, CNBC or all these other areas of the internet that's kind of like, it just feels like dress up. It feels like these people like pretending to wear suits, pretending to talk like, the bankers of yesteryear versus Wall Street bets was internet native. It's Reddit, it's username first, it's screenshots, it's memes or whatever. And amongst all those memes, there was actually a lot of intelligent conversation. Like something else to ask me a lot is, where did I learn how to trade, right? Where did I learn how to read charts and, read financial reports, whatever. And like, it's all through Reddit. It's all through the internet. I never spent a single dime on a course or a book. I learned everything I know from Reddit comments and the occasional YouTube video, and they're just like Googling stuff.
And now a word from our sponsor. It's me. I'm actually not taking any sponsors in season 1, but I just wanted to say thank you for listening. It's been such a joy recording these episodes, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I have. If you would like to support the podcast, the single most impactful thing you can do is leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening. This will help new people discover the podcast. And if you have someone in your life who's passionate about marketing, send this their way. They'll probably love diving into these insider tactics and stories. With that, back to the conversation. Yeah, that's incredible. And so then you got into this community, you became one of the biggest people in the community with your Sir Jack profile.
Yeah, and eventually... that was kind of also another lucky, fortunate circumstance. So I just had this like dormant account called Sir Jack a lot that I created in college, and I guess it's like pretty memorable. So it's really hard to kind of follow people on Reddit. And that's actually one of the reasons I had to create AfterHour, because people were following me. They wanted to get alerted of my trades, and Reddit was just not easy to get alerted when someone makes a new post. People had to download and pay money on these like sketchy third-party apps that let you follow someone and get alerted when they make a trade. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, I was a lurker on Wall Street bets for a while, and then my very first post, I still remember this one too, was purely out of ego, because there's this one guy who posted his X over 4 years, right? And like got a lot like thousands of votes, and people were like, congrats. And I was like, I made 20X in 4 months. I just wanted to one up him, and I think the title was literally like, I see you, with your 20X in 4 years. Here's my 20X in 4 months. And once you start getting those internet points and that attention, it's addicting. So I just kept posting all my trades. Every week or every other day, I would post a screenshot of my current position or a new position, and basically straight to Wall Street bets. And I started gaining a following. People recognized my username, they recognized that kind of unique profile picture, they recognized that kind of my style of screenshotting, right? And over time I gained 50,000 followers on Reddit. So you can't follow someone on Reddit albeit I think that's like a deprecated feature now. I didn't have like a Discord or Twitter or anything like that. I just kept growing my Reddit account because again, I never meant for this to be anything. This was like this anonymous thing. I was working at YouTube. I was working at Google. It was a Google 401k. You know that too?
No kidding. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're doing these trades in your 401k.
Yeah. This is the Google 401k, which was another just like, I only could have done this at Google for two reasons. One is very few 401ks allow you to self-trade. So most 401ks give you like a small menu of like, 2055 retirement funds and other mutual funds, right? Because they're meant to be relatively safe. But at Google, for some reason, you're allowed to kind of port it over to this self-directed brokerage thing. And that allows you to kind of buy at least stocks. I don't think it lets you do options and margin and risky stuff, but at least lets you buy single stocks. And the other thing was that it all started because of the Google match, the Google 401k match.
Yes.
So I had no money, like I said, in 2019, and I really wanted to actually just buy a car. I wanted to buy something, for myself. So I was still driving this like 15-year-old Honda Accord or something. And so the Google annual bonus, right? It always lands in January, and the default is that it lands in your 401k, and then Google will match it, right? And because that's like the responsible, it's a good default, right? Most people want that. It makes sense. It's free money. But I wanted to be irresponsible. Like I wanted the 401k money to go straight to my pocket because I wanted to buy a car with it, right? And so I had that in my mind. And then in January came, I'm like, oh, I should probably toggle that option or whatever. Apparently the deadline was back in December.
Oh, so all the way into your 401k.
Yeah, so now I'm on January and I missed this toggle, and now all the bonus went into my 401k plus the matching. That's how it started off as 35k. I'm like, hey, this money's kind of stuck there forever. That's like 30 plus years, and so I might as well just like throw it into something that's a little bit interesting. And so that's kind of what snowballed and I started trading actively with it.
So basically, you're like, hey, if I can't have fun and buy a car, I can have fun and turn this into $8 million.
The 8 million was never the dream or the goal or even like a scenario in my head. It was just all a blur, especially the first few months where my strategy was simple. I would just go all in one single stock at a time. It sounds simple to me. And so I just kept doing that and it just kept snowballing,
Incredible. That's amazing. And then you got to the point where you quit your job, you took some time away, and then you decided to come back and start this super app. What was that experience like, going back into startups, building a new app?
Yeah. So I quit my job. I was still very hungry, like the main thing about, even though the $8 million is there, I haven't really touched it. It's in a 401k. There's like a penalty if you withdraw from it. So it's a nice, safety net. It's also like, in a way, I'm actually not even too proud of it because it was just luck. I still view it as mostly luck, and it's not like I built something and added some value to the world, right? Like trading was actually this kind of very solitary activity, versus I view startups, especially the type of startups I like to build, are the ones that like increase the pie, right? The ones that are adding something net new to the world that no one else has tried or done before, and the world benefits, right? Like the team benefits, the investors benefit, the users benefit, the economy benefits. So finance to me was always this kind of weird corner of the internet that's still stuck in the web 1 days. Like when I started looking more carefully at these like newsletters and websites and seminars or whatever, like, Boggleheads, it's still a PHP BB board. And there's been a couple of attempts, like StockTwits is, one of the better ones, albeit they haven't really innovated in 15 years. And I think they're just surviving good SEO. And, people are migrating to like Reddit, which has a lot of problems because you can't really follow people. And Twitter is now just weird and full of scams, and Discords, especially more so. So I felt like there just needed to be a trustworthy platform on the internet where you could follow traders, right? Because the reason people followed me was because, and we're kidding at these folks, is because you knew this was their position. But, you always had to like double check, right? Like, because I was posting so consistently over many, many weeks, people kind of gradually got the sense of like, oh, this guy's legit, right? And Rowan Kitty also, as legit. And whenever I stumbled upon a screenshot or someone bragging about something, I never believed them, And so I was like, there must be a better way to do this. And I stumbled across Plaid, which, is primarily known for the bank account aggregation and powering apps like Mint and Monarch and even ACH transfers. They actually have a brokerage product now too, which allow you to link your Robinhood account, and I could pull in your stock positions, right? I'm like, oh, cool. I wonder if I could build something around this. And I built a little prototype and just I shared it with a couple of friends, shared it with a couple of investors that I knew. Credit to Nico at General Catalyst. He was like, you should build this, and I want to invest. And so that's kind of what started this whole journey.
That is incredible. And what a strong combination of there's this community that wants to be able to talk to each other about their trades. And now there's this feature that allows you to validate their actual holdings without necessarily doxing who they are as individuals. It's amazing. Did you realize in that moment what a big discovery that was, that you could actually do this now?
It felt obvious to me, right? Because that pseudonymity element is so important for getting over this financial taboo of talking about real money and real positions or whatever. At Google, like, I wanted to talk about this. So that it was a key insight, because at Google, we have like the investing Google groups and the personal finance Google groups, and there are a couple of characters that are very active on there. And yet I never felt comfortable sharing my thoughts on those places. Because I felt like my thoughts are always like in a minority a bit. Like, I was bullish on GameStop in October of 2020. Like, I had a solid thesis. I wanted to talk to other people about it, but like, I knew it's like, this is not the major, like, everyone else is like spy and chill and don't touch it and, blah, blah. And so it's kind of like, again, that whole like majority minority thing. And then in case a coworker did see my, rant or, my position or whatever, they might think differently of me, right? And that's going to affect my work output and whatever. So I found like pseudonymity was actually really important to this for financial discussions, and no one else was doing it. There was Common Stock and Public and a few other apps that tried, but they were all real name. It felt like LinkedIn. It felt like, you had your profile picture and a real name, and the content was just like LinkedIn. To me, it's like super boring.
True. Okay, I'm super curious in this area of community. It seems like this has been your specialty for a long time, or the part that's maybe drawn you in the most. When you look at your journey from fan hero to bigger companies and then back into a startup with AfterHour, how has community changed for you, or is it pretty consistent throughout?
You mean like the definition of community, or
how you've seen community flourish on the internet?
Yeah. And oh man, it's a great question. Great question. I mean, especially like YouTube, right? I think YouTube is the winner in terms of like the overall community. Like, obviously there's like sub communities in beauty and Mr. Beast and gaming, but you just feel like you're a part of this kind of this bigger thing, right? There's a shared culture, there's a shared language, there's like rituals and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's tons of blog posts about like how to create community, but I think the most fascinating thing that I take from it is like, honestly, it's just authenticity and a reason to exist, right? I think too many, especially like, marketers and business owners and that type, are trying to create community because it's the buzzword as they see other people do it, right? But it comes across inauthentic. Because they're usually not a part of it themselves, right? They're trying to create it themselves. I think that's crucial. The leader has to be a part of it in the most authentic way possible, right? Otherwise, it just seems kind of like, yeah. And then the other thing is just like, why does it need to exist? I'm always fascinated by a lot of these DTC brands who are trying to create community around Casper mattress or they're like leggings or stuff like that, right? And it's just a lot of pictures of events and pretty people, having fun at these events or whatever. And I get it. It feels good to be a part of something, right? But I feel like there's always an element of like, why does this exist, right? Or maybe a mission statement, really. And fortunately, with stock market, we're attached to the stock market. And so the reason is we're trying to make money. We have a mission statement. Our company is trying to help people make money together. And it's like a lot of those cultural values of like being wholesome and helping each other and virtual hugs on red days and being, no politics, keep it about money, don't be an asshole, and a couple other kind of things that I just like live by example. I just tell people, hey, don't do that. Or like, hey, first strike. And the way I leave comments and other people see, the comments I leave and they try to emulate that and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of little things in terms of creating community online, but it's a force to be reckoned with if you can grow it to a certain size.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times marketers in particular, we tend to look at community and see the value of it, as you've demonstrated with AfterHour. But then if we try to create it with the goal of just having a strong community, that may be defeating the whole purpose. Do you think there's a place for someone to sit down and say, I want to build a community around my Casper mattresses? Or is that the entirely wrong way to go about it? And maybe not every business should even aspire to have a strong community?
It's a good question. Because I do think of like Eight Sleep, right? They've created like the techno mattress that has an app and water cooled and all that kind of stuff. And it has a community, it has champions, right? It has like certain influential people that talk about it and that kind of stuff, right? I don't know. I think it really depends on what your product is. Like I think if it's a DTC product, community it can be loosely defined as in just like the type of people you want to be with, right? Or the type of people you want to associate yourself with. I think Equinox also does a good job of that, right? It's more of a brand halo if you think about it that way. Versus we're a social app, and so it's like it's every day, like who you're. It's like your broader friend group, right? It's like your online community is like your World Warcraft guild, or like it's like that broader kind of community.
Yeah.
Yeah, fandom is kind of like a interesting one, right? Because if you think about like if you're a part of like the Pokemon community or whatever. And there's a lot of traditions, a lot of insider culture and memes and all that kind of stuff that you associate yourself with. And it kind of, gets its own momentum after a certain point.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that the Sir Jack profile was sort of an accident built out of ego. Would you be able to replicate that by intention? Or is it the sort of thing that only can happen by accident?
It's a great question. Because core part of the identity was honestly the fact that it was never meant to be anything.
Yeah.
I literally did not have a Twitter or Discord or anything else for the first 2 years because I really thought it was not going to turn anything out. It was just going to be Reddit, and I was stubborn about it and whatever. And I don't know, I think that that authenticity really helped, and that founder market fit, and that fact that I was doing this before I had an app or a company or anything like this. I think that definitely did help a lot. I think the key part is the authenticity part, right? It's a really hard game meta world we live in now, because I think consumers are more and more, I guess, trained on inauthenticity and that kind of stuff. And so, the easiest way is just be consistent and putting into work and showing up every day, right? But that takes time, and usually marketers and businesses don't have time. And so how do you ride that line, right?
Yeah. How do you navigate the transition, or how did you navigate the transition from a pseudonymous person on Reddit who is posting wherever you wanted to without worries of people associating with your identity to face reveal? What was that like for you?
Now, I wanted to control that story, right? That was kind of the big thing. It was starting to get to a point where I was showing up at events, I was pitching, employees and investors, and I was worried that somebody might, take the story out of my control. And so that's kind of where I started like floating the story around. Unfortunately, I met Brian Pennick at Forbes, who was at this LA Tech Week event and wanted to write about me. He like followed Sir Jack. He was like already aware of my story, so it was kind of like a lucky match made in heaven. And overwhelmingly, it was a great positive vibe. I mean, like a lot of my family, a lot of my friends, they didn't know. I actually have very close circle of people than you. And so, I was ready for this. I think there was a purpose for it, right? Like it was because I wanted to kind of take the startup to the next level, and also increase the kind of, I think, authenticity and trust for the company, because people could see like I'm not some random guy. I worked at Google, I was at Stripe, and you could trust, the app with your brokerage connection, and I take security seriously and all that kind of stuff. So I think that overall was net positive and helped. And then personally, nothing much has, I think, changed that much. I think I appreciate being now more open, that like, Sir Jack and Ken. I mean, there's still two kind of different identities. They both have different Twitter accounts. One's more about like founder stuff. One's more about like the generate trades or whatever. And I don't know, it has been kind of nice to be able to kind of separate those two identities.
It is. And it's interesting because you've built this app to enable people to be anonymous, but the cost of doing that is you have to no longer be anonymous.
Yeah.
How have you found fame has treated you in the last couple of years?
I don't think this is like fame at all. I think it's just I'm trying to do whatever it takes to kind of build this startup, and it just has kind of an interesting founding story based on Sir Jack and my story, right? Like, I mean, my hope is that the the Sir Jack persona can live on and become like the mascot for After or whatever, kind of like the Duolingo mascot, right? And then my eyes are on the bigger prize, which is like, how do I turn After Hour into like a generation defining finance company? Like, how do I? Because I have this vision that like finance is still too taboo, and that's really limits our ability to learn from each other about finance. Like I truly believe that as humans, we are social creatures and we learn most effectively from each other. And this younger generation, they're learning at a rapid pace from each other about working out, about applying to college, about, going on dates, all these kind of entertainment stories on TikTok, right? And yet finance is still one of those things that's still a little taboo. There's only a few people making financial content. And there's also few people that you could talk to in your real life about financial content, right? So I think you're really limiting yourself to how much you learn about stocks and investing and how much other people earn or how they earn their money, how they got a mortgage, why they spend that much money on a car, even like how much you spend on DoorDash. It's just like all these actual areas of finance that I'd love to kind of open up. And I want to, I think I think those conversations are really, really interesting. I think that treat finance as entertainment, just like how I think many others treat sports as entertainment or celebrity gossip. I think we're starting to see more and more people just be interested in finance as just like a conversation topic. And so there still isn't a great place on the internet for these conversations to happen. And so I'm hoping for them to be on After Hour. And then we have a whole slew of financial products and services I think we can complement that kind of experience.
Yeah. And how do you balance on the one hand, being the mascot that you are, Sir Jack, and that's so essential to the growth of After Hour, but on the other hand, your eyes are on this prize of building a stock market super app. Both of those are more than full-time jobs. How do you balance those two at the same time?
Yeah, well, AI can really help in terms of content generation and moderation and kind of be your content co-pilot, right? But a lot of it's still just me constantly being in the community, both on app and off app, and kind of being a part of those conversations, right? And so I try to time block it. I try to, make sure it kind of during the market day, I'm usually replying to people. Then is usually during the after market hours, I can kind of get some more critical product and design and coding work done.
How many hours do you normally work in a day right now?
I think the better question to ask is how many hours I sleep each day.
2.
Yeah, it fluctuates a lot. Let's just say that.
Looking at your LinkedIn, looking at your Twitter, looking obviously within After Hour, you're active across all these different platforms. Have you found that the same approach works on all of them? Or are you finding that there's a very distinctive approach to going viral on LinkedIn, going viral on TikTok, etc.?
That's also a great question. I think this game that founders have to play in 2024, especially if you're like, I guess, more consumer oriented or trying to create that halo effect or personal brand or whatever, right? Like I actually really hate it. I've talked to a few other founders about this too. But they used to be like, you talk about what's interesting to you and, whether people like it or not, no big deal, right? But now it's just all about the algorithm. I hate that so much. Because it's like, it's competitive, it's like, um, it is both in terms of like, in order to appease the algorithm gods, right? They want to be able to see you're an active poster. So that means you have to create something every day. And you might not have something you want to say every day. So now you start getting to slop, right? But also each community, you're right, does have a bit of a culture and a type of content that resonates. And I hate kind of content on LinkedIn and Twitter, basically. I hate that I have to use it because in my taste, it's really cringy or try hard or Asian baity, right? Or mean in terms of like Twitter or shocking and that kind of stuff, right? And there's no room for nuanced conversation because it's just like the first, couple of lines to get people to engage. And so, yeah, part of my soul just withers away that I have to play this game. And I still try to play the game within my, my comfort area, right? Like I'll never dunk on someone or make fun of somebody. I try to stick to, truths and cold hard facts and also just things that I find kind of pretty unique and I've never seen anyone else share before versus, fortunate or unfortunate, the 1 million story about, how Elon Musk started X or PayPal still gets, So I don't know. It's still a work in progress. I think the major change I made recently is that like I do have to get good at this. I think what's also comforting is thousands of others have gotten good at it. I should be able to do this too.
At what point do you see these as essential that you need to succeed in all of them? Or do you see it as sort of you can drop one and make another your main focus?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's two modes, especially if you're a founder. One is, where's your audience and what's the most effective channel to reach them, right? So my audience are, young investors are mostly on, Twitter and Reddit and scatter across TikTok right now. And so we're trying to figure out how to kind of grow on these platforms, right? And then the second effect is kind of like is kind of more the founder halo, right? Whether you're trying to sound impressive for recruiting or fundraising or whatever, that's kind of more effective, and that's kind of LinkedIn and Twitter as well.
Makes sense. And it seems like from the outside, you are sort of one of these people who are just naturally good in knowing what's going to go viral. Even simple things like your face reveal. You had that massive purple hat that you can reveal your face and just be like, hey, this is who I am. But you went the extra mile of having this really unusual purple hat that's become almost a mascot for AfterHour. Is that something that just naturally is who you are, or have you learned how to identify what will go viral?
I'm not sure viral was the key. I mean, definitely the key, always a goal, but the purple hat was funny. It's created by this company called Noggin Boss, and they're primarily known for creating sports hats. So like all the different sports. It's modeled after the big thumb, the big thumbs up kind of thing. Just the foam finger, right?
Yeah.
And so they just created a hat version of that to express your fandom. So I don't know. I'm just a very curious person, right? And so when I heard about that, I visited the website and I saw this button that's like create your own. I'm like, oh, let me see. Oh, there's a purple that matches my company. Let me upload a logo. Oh, cool. $100. Okay, sure, I'll do it. And it took like, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks to make. That was, custom, right? But then I got a purple one. I got a black one too. And, anything you can do to stand out.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You've been in the forefront of more non-traditional media, like building your own subreddit and building this persona. You've also been in very traditional media. I believe is MSNBC made a whole documentary that featured you at one point. How have you found the results of being famous on non-traditional media versus being famous on traditional media? Has it had a similar impact on your business, or is one much more important than the other?
I mean, going where your audience is the number one most important thing, especially because our app is based on downloads and usage, right? And so no one watches a TV show and be like, oh, let me download this app. People stumble across a TikTok video or better yet, a link, right? I'd be like, oh, cool, let me check this out. And so our success has been from Reddit and our subreddit and Let's I Leave versus, being on Diamond Hands, which was that documentary. And also, I think I was on Fox Business a few times. So I don't think those led to any downloads. It just makes good B-roll.
Jumping back to Reddit, you built, if I'm not wrong, the Path to 1 Million subreddit into a massively race to 10 million. Thank you. You built it into one of the top 2% subreddits from what I saw on Reddit. How did you do that?
So the race to 10 million, I'll be honest, was actually started by someone else back when I was still trading, and it was kind of become like this meme that 8 digits or bust and $10 million. There were a couple other people that are also kind of racing there. And so I think he was inspired to create a whole new subreddit for this called the Race to 10 Million. I call it the greatest, a reality show in our lives. And it was just like maybe 6 or so people all trying to trade their way to $10 million. It grew, to a nice size during 2020, 21, 2022 got quiet again. And then, it wasn't being actively maintained or anything like that, right? It just kind of was there. I think it hit this magical number. Probably Reddit doesn't want me to reveal this, but I think it was 25,000. I think it hit 25,000 followers or subscribers or whatever you want to call it on subreddit, and it became eligible to be trending on homepages, other people's feeds and stuff like that. And so I started seeing posts get way more comments and views than 25,000. So I'm like, oh, this is actually getting thrown onto other people's feeds and whatever. Also, I don't know, maybe Reddit was IPOing and trying to make more content pop. And then all of a sudden, other people started posting their new trades and their journeys, like 1 million and 2 million, whatever, because it felt like, I mean, at this point, it was a whole new generation of people that was not aware of the origin story, right? They just saw the name and be like, oh, let me post my trades or sports bets or anything. It kind of became like this corner on Reddit where people were just sharing like their different wealth stories. And so I started, getting back into it and started posting my own stuff and replying to people and commentating and moderating more. And a great, power of being of owning your subreddit is being able to sticky comments. So anytime I notice a post will start trending, and I'm very transparent about this, it's obviously there. And I'm like, hey, that sounds great. Would love to show you. Would love to see your portfolio connected on AfterHour. But there were, a few scammers there showing or sharing Photoshop screenshots or stealing from other people's screenshots. And I'm like, hey, prove it. If you really do have 5 million, prove it. Connect to the AfterHour. And I think, the value prop kind of sells itself.
Yeah. And how do you, coming to that part of you're reaching a massive new audience, people who don't even know the origin story of this subreddit, how do you maintain the culture of a community when it is growing fast and new people are coming in?
You need other people to start championing you. And it's honestly just a lot of repetition. I feel like I'm beating the dead horse and I'm repeating my story, a million times every day. And probably people that know me or follow me closely are sick of it. Like, why is he still repeating the same? So I feel like, like those pop stars that just keep singing that one famous song they have, right? But every day there's thousands of people who don't know the story. And yeah, it's kind of my responsibility to kind of show them the story. And then, 1% of them become followers and champion the story. And then it's great to see, other people reply to naysayers and negative folks like, oh, this guy, someone will say, oh, he's fake. And everyone was like, no, he's real. Check it out. And link to AfterHour, link to my other posts and stuff like that. So I think that's another great power of having a good community is that they'll fight for you.
It's interesting because one of the things I found when I was installing AfterHour is you're one of the best apps I've ever seen at onboarding. You do it very, very well. Like the terms of service where you have emojis instead of a whole bunch of text. It's just wonderful. I wonder if that comes from your background in community that you realize how critical this onboarding component is.
Well, we try to keep it simple. I think the main thing is people want to get into the app. So we try to keep it simple. And we basically only really have like 2 steps. One is just like a suggested followers page where we try to show you the most active traders on our platform so you can follow them. And then the second one is, quick community guidelines page, just emphasizing things like don't be an asshole, do your own research, and stuff like that. So it has to set the tone before you enter, right?
Yeah. How do you see Reddit succeeding so well for you when you look at a lot of other companies or marketers, they've seen Reddit as a emerging platform for over a decade. It's not succeeded very well on advertising. It's not succeeded very well on organic. It's almost like either it works or it doesn't work. Do you think it just so happens that it works well for you, or do you know something that other people do not know about Reddit?
Well, Reddit is, in many marketing circles, they say it's the toughest nut to crack because it's the most kind of anti-advertising, right? You're the most prudent, or they have the best smell, right? If they're like astroturfing or fake or whatever. And I'm not. I think it stems from the origin of Reddit, right? Where it was like this, technical, very very technical audience, and then it like got a bunch of Dig offshoots when Dig shut down, which is why I've enjoyed it because it always felt like very authentic. We have like there was no kind of corporateness about it, right? And I think it's actually promising that AfterHour has taken off so well in Reddit circles because we've been able to kind of conquer that audience, and other aspects should hopefully be easier. But in terms of like my advice for other marketers, I think you just gotta show up and put in the work. I think a lot of people that I've seen, they just like show up a little bit, and disappear when they're not getting results. And that's the hardest thing as a marketer, especially if you're a performance or direct marketer, is like, I'm not getting results. I'm not going to put any effort here, right? I don't know. There's a very few case studies where people have been effective at this, and I think AI is changing the game a lot here. I've seen a few kind of apps and startups try to help you create Reddit accounts and reply to people and like pretend like you're a user and stuff like that. It's going to be changing a lot in the next few months to years.
Do you think building a Reddit community is something that a marketing person or even a marketing department should consider doing? Or does it need to be led by the founder who has a long-term commitment to making this work?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I've seen a lot of influencers have pretty fun subreddits, right? Like you have Game Theory, you have like Ludwig. I think PewDiePie had a pretty fun one. It's funny how a lot of YouTubers and Twitch streamers have been able to kind of leverage Reddit to kind of create their community in a kind of feed-based way. I don't know. I think another key element of community is, what is the community talking about with each other? You know, right? It's this. I feel like I've seen these graphs of like broadcast, which is like one to many, and then it's like, does the community ever talk to each other, or is it only that one to many direction? And I think, if that was just marketing for ChatGPT is actually a pretty good example. Like you can imagine if done incorrectly, it would just be like updates from OpenAI, right? And like, here's ChatGPT, here's our recipes and stuff that's like clean and looked upon, right? Versus if you go to the ChatGPT subreddit right now, which I think is unofficial, is a lot of people sharing prompts and results with each other. And it's very natural, right? People are just trying to discover and see what this kind of does. I think that's a real community, when the community can actually talk to each other and there's a reason for them to talk to each other.
How do you see communities on a platform like Reddit versus communities that are in a separate home? So for example, you sort of went from Reddit to AfterHour as a place to build your community more fully with this verified stock portfolio feature, versus someone like Ludwig, who could go anywhere in the world, but chose to go to Reddit to organize his community. What are the pros and cons of building your own versus using Reddit?
Yeah, the main thing is the control over the algorithm, right? Because on Reddit, I think one of the reasons that Wall Street Bets died is because they can't control the algorithm, and there's only a limited set of things that the mods can do to kind of, lean content towards one way or another. For stock market especially, there's a whole range of content. Some people want more memes, some people want more day trades, some people want more, long-term investment thesis. And so we had to build our own app in order to kind of control that algorithm and give people the stuff that they actually want to see, and also deliver it faster. Another problem with these feed-based For You recommendation algorithms is that it takes a while until the algorithm knows, okay, let me show this to you, And in terms of the stock market, it's not fast enough. The stock market moves really fast now, and if somebody just made a trade, you want to know instantly. And so that's another thing that's really missing from Reddit and a lot of these other algorithms. Like you can, upload a video to TikTok, and TikTok loves evergreen content, right? They love a cute video, a cute cat video that they could keep serving people again and again. Doesn't matter if it was made yesterday or 2 years ago. But that's completely the opposite. I don't care about some NVIDIA pieces from 5 years ago. I want to know what should I do with NVIDIA today or tomorrow and stuff.
How do you build an algorithm? Because I get how you can say my algorithm focuses more on recency because I need to surface the things that I can trade on today. But as you mentioned, you have people who want to trade long-term, you have people who want to day trade. How do you build an algorithm in AfterHour that works for all of those different types of users?
It's hard. There's a couple of things happening underneath the hood. The main one is we're using shaped.ai actually to kind of power the For You algorithm. And you're kind of tweaking a lot of different things in the model until you get it right. The other big thing is that we're experimenting with a couple of ways to use generative AI to actually summarize, what you've missed since you last opened the app. And that's another piece that is missing from our apps, which is like, you have to do the work, you have to crawl through a lot of content, but a lot of times people just want to know what's going on right now. Why did this happen? What did I miss since the last time I opened the app, right? And I think we're creating some really interesting content around that too.
Exciting. You have two main inputs that I can see anyway to building this community in AfterHour. The one being what you do as the founder, and the other being what you do as this super champion of Sir Jack. Which is more important?
Different phases of that company, different skills, right? So I think the gain from that 0 to, I call it 0.1 right now, it's doing things that don't scale. And so it was me showing up, it was me DMing people, it was me asking to get invited to your Discord, and I'll just do like a quick AMA, right? Like the first couple hundred, first couple thousand, it's a slog. It's really getting one user at a time. Even, in consumer levels, maybe, hundreds and thousands at a time. But in order to reach the next stage, my goal is 10x and 100x this app over the next year. And so that requires a very different level of thinking and product features and marketing, right? And so that's starting to, I need to put on more my Kevin hat. And we have a couple of ideas along those lines too.
It's incredible. Have you ever had a community building idea that just completely failed?
I mean, definitely a lot of ideas that just like fell flat. One idea that I really like it because it had multiple goals, but it definitely didn't move the needle on growth that much, which was this Twitter hunting cross post feature we built. So it's pretty cool. Basically, we noticed that a lot of users were sharing screenshots from Twitter, right? Because still had a large finance community over there. People are sharing interesting things, and so they would screenshot it, open after hour, create a post, attach a photo, whatever. It's like 20 steps, and we're like, why not make it easier to cross post, right? So we created this bot that's very similar to like those save to Notion bots, right? That you kind of just like reply with a certain keyword and it'll do something. And so if you reply to, if you saw like some interesting tweet you wanted to share in after hour, you just reply with @after hour bot hunt. You will hunt it and basically just cross post it into after hour and give you credit, right? And it's pretty cool for like making it's like, one step now, instead of 20 steps, more content on the app. We wanted to grow. We wanted it to also move the needle on growth because other people will see the bot and I'll be like, what is this? And go to, that hour, right? Twitter being, Elon's thing, they limit the visibility of the third reply. So if like a tweet thread or chain, right? You have like the OP, the original post, I call tweet A. If you tweeted B, if you said, hunted as tweet B, and then the hunt bot replies in tweet C, you don't see the C one. If you open up the A post, you see A and then B, 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 B. You don't actually see A, B, C. So it didn't really move the needle much on that stuff. And then there's, there's a lot of things that it's a lot of other community ideas. Like we do a few AMAs and town halls in our Discord, which is really good for making the community feel heard, right? And that matters. I mean, your power users are your power users that create the most content. They're your champions, and they want to feel heard and get time with you, etc. And so a lot of those things are also worth doing. But I guess acknowledging it's not going to be moving the quantitative needle, but it hopefully moves some needle that kind of pays off in the long run.
You mentioned how in the long run, Wall Street Bets has sort of died, that they weren't able to maintain the right types of content, the right algorithm, and people stopped really visiting it as much. Given how hard it is to build a community in the first place, how do you think about the longevity of 10, 20 years in the future? Maybe Sir Jack is no longer so active. How does your community continue to thrive?
Well, community needs to evolve into a community of communities. After Hour essentially is a platform for it to happen, right? Like we already have dozens and we've got hundreds of folks with lots of followers and people that kind of subscribe to them and can't wait for the next post update, right? Because I think that's the benefit of the internet, which is that you can have the long tail of creators that talk a certain way, that have a certain idea, whatever, that you just kind of like latch onto, right? So the long term is that this becomes a community of communities.
Fair. And in that way, you're here for more than one person, so you are more likely to stick around. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Another piece I found, and this shows my age, that I found very surprising about how you built After Hour is that there's no web app. There's no way to use it on a desktop. You have to be on the mobile device, which I'm one of those people that do not use mobile very much. I prefer to be on a full-size keyboard. How did you think about that decision to limit to just iOS and Android?
Yeah, that's pretty important. And we are, we hope to start working on a website and a desktop app pretty shortly. Because I think it's finally time we need that. But the main motivation for keeping it mobile only for so long was because I wanted it to be the bathroom app. Like I wanted people to kind of create this habit of opening After Hour on a bathroom break, in between meetings, on your daily commute, in the morning, create a much more, I think, physical or emotional attachment to a little thing on your phone, and you remember where it was, and you remember you build that habit versus typing in a URL once and you bounce and you never come back. And the other part was that I felt like push notifications were really important for this type of speed that I wanted to create, and especially when someone makes a trade, you want to get a push about it immediately. And so it's funny, like Robinhood has a website, right? And you can trade on the website, whatever, but I still use the mobile app. That's how I think, that's how I know of Robinhood. That's how I think about Robinhood. That's
Same.
what I grab or jump towards, even though I'm on a laptop and I can just go to Robinhood.com. I just think of it more as a mobile app, right?
Yeah.
Versus I've visited other websites and apps where I found the website first. And even though they do have a mobile app, I think of them as the website and I just don't use them as much because the app I just never remembered it exists.
Jumping further into design, one of your only LinkedIn recommendations going all the way back to 2011 is Chris McCann talking about how you revolutionized their design for, I believe it's Startup Digest VIP. How does the design feature in importance when you look at building a successful application?
Yeah. Oh my God. So hard. Huge credit to my designer. It's all about simplicity. I think the hardest thing about design is just keeping things simple. Because it's so easy to just throw more numbers on the screen and make things scrollable and whatever, and kind of overly designed for design's sake. But the hardest muscle to exercise is simplicity and just asking, like, does this need to exist, right? What purpose does it serve, both for the user and for the company, et cetera? So, I mean, yeah, that's designed to me in a nutshell. And especially when you're building a consumer mobile app and thinking about, well, like the lay person is thinking and doing, and there's like a million things. Like, basically, another way to think about it is that you're competing against, some funny cat video on TikTok, like every second.
Yeah.
And so what's keeping them on the app? And for us, it's the content, right? There's nowhere else on the internet you can see that these people are putting their money where their mouth is. And when someone's talking about their NVIDIA trade and this guy has $500,000 in NVIDIA, that's like real money on the line. And it just hits differently than if you go on Twitter or even CNBC and watch someone talk about NVIDIA. Like, do these people actually even own any? That's always the top question that comes up in my mind.
Yes. And I see how in your app you've featured that in your design. It's very easy to quickly see what is their actual position. Are they putting their money where their mouth is? What have you found to be the most important design principles for someone who maybe doesn't understand design right now? Hi, that's me. How would you summarize the design principles that really matter the most?
Design principles that matter the most. I mean, I think it's just about reducing that cognitive load of like, what am I supposed to be looking at, right? And so I think we have a maximum of like 2 big buttons on key screens, and when possible, try to just like, explain like what this is and what's going on, right? And it just comes back to just keep things simple.
Fair.
Like, especially for the position card was actually one of the hardest things, because I wanted to throw a lot of stuff on there, and it was a really interesting challenge to kind of just keep it simple and just say, like, here's the amount, right? Here's how much it's up today in total, and then a line chart. There's only like, really 3 or 4 things on the thing, versus like people are always asking, like, what's the average cost? How many shares is this, right? Is this bullish or bearish or whatever? There's so many things you can do to kind of talk about it, right? But it's really overwhelming for, like, again, like the average person. And also, I think comforting is just, you design it, you throw it out there and see the reaction. Like, most people were fine with it.
Yeah. And I remember you mentioning in some interview, I forget where, that you took a very intentional approach on also your stock page, where you didn't just put the full, like, here's what Google Finance says about the stock in all details,
right.
But you took the most important pieces that you felt really mattered and featured that there.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know. Anytime I come across another finance app, I feel like their stock page is just like a carbon copy of Yahoo Finance, and they just throw out like every single number on there because the data providers is providing, like, just throw it in there, right? Which is fine. I mean, it doesn't detract from anything. At least my initial target audience, I think they already use Google Finance. They already use TradingView, right? Like, they have those tools. What's unique and new we're adding to this tool set, this conversation, right? And so we're adding verified trades. We're adding creators who are sharing their thesis and DD. Like, that's what we're adding. It's not so important that you know what the volume was on this stock yesterday. Like, it's out there. You
can find that elsewhere. And it's such a good point that sometimes less is more. I think about that for myself when I look at something like Robinhood. It doesn't have necessarily all the information that, say, IBKR has. But when I look at IBKR as a non-advanced investor, it actually turns me away more than it's helpful. Whereas Robinhood, yes, has less information, but it's more accessible. I can digest it more easily. I think similarly in what you're doing here. Moving to a slightly different area, I looked up some of your co-founders and other people within AfterHour. I noticed your head of engineering describes his job on LinkedIn as lead GitHub Copilot prompter. How has AI made it easier or harder to build a company?
I mean, it's amazing, right? It helps with content generation, it helps with coding, it helps with moderation. I mean, a lot has been said about AI in terms of how it's making people more productive, especially in the SaaS sense and like customer service and lead generation and all that kind of stuff, right? But for us, it's really about how does it. I mean, the coding wise is that's just amazing. I think everyone on the team uses Cursor, and it's helped a lot in terms of just like being able to kind of write some boilerplate code and understand like some other pieces of code. But I've been recently playing around with GPT-01, right? Like the reasoning model. I'm still trying to figure out like how best to use it. But I did a survey with my users the other day, and I had like 5 questions in there, and I just threw it into GPT. I'm like, hey, here's the context, here's the survey. What else am I missing? What other questions should I ask? Right? And actually, did a pretty good job of like coming up with like 3 more questions for me to ask. Probably those questions I like, I might have dropped in Slack before and asked the team. Oh yeah, don't bother the team, just bother this.
It is absolutely incredible. And it's just so much fun. You can accomplish so much more to what you were saying earlier of like being able to use AI to co-pilot on LinkedIn and other platforms. It makes it so much more fun that you don't have to sit there crunching out for hours at a time. You can get a first draft from AI and then go from there.
Yeah, like I said, we're starting to build a couple of AI features in terms of just summarizing the news, summarizing what's going on in the stock, summarizing someone's thesis about a stock. Like for example, if you're a new user at AfterHour, it feels like you're kind of entering like season 5 of a TV show because you're trying to catch up on like what's going on here, right? Like why does this guy have $1 million in ASTS? Like what's the thesis? They had to crawl through like 1 million posts to kind of catch up on that, and it's a lot of work. So why not use AI to kind of crunch that and create a summary? I'm like, hey, here's the thesis, here's the link, here's the recent update, right? And so that you can just sort of, like, catch up a lot faster. So I think AI is going to be really, really useful for a retail audience from that angle. In addition, just to being a bot that you can ask questions to as well. There's a couple of finance apps out there that let you kind of create graphs and do your research on that kind of stuff, right? I don't think everyone's going to be using apps like that. Like there's only a certain type of person that asks those detailed questions to analyze, financial reports or whatever. But I think it's all content at the end of the day. Like how basically the way I look at it is how can I use AI to create more content?
Fair to compete with those cat videos, as you mentioned earlier. What do you think are the most important factors to building a community today? And the reason I ask this is when you look at 10 years ago, we're in a very different world. You weren't competing with cat videos. You're competing with a lot less compelling content, and you didn't have AI. It was actually real people typing things out or videoing themselves. Now you have massive amounts of AI. People can replicate whatever you're doing very quickly. Is it more product? Is it more community? Is it more design? What are the essentials to building a community?
Yeah, the other problem is that it's not 2008 anymore where people are willing to try and download an app. I think that's what happened when you hit the tail end of the S curve. I feel bad for like Marissa Meyer because she recently released her like Sunrise calendar app, and I think she just like had a tech exposed and I think assumed people would download it or whatever. Especially like if you were trained on like that era of finance or app marketing or whatever. How do I trigger this back up? There you go. Okay. So growing an app, growing community, growing anything in 2024 is insanely more difficult. I think what I've seen is you could lean into novelty, you could lean into money making or any really like sin, or you could lean into authenticity, right? Especially when it comes to community. So bring those 3 down. Novelty, especially with AI, that's kind of what I've seen a lot of my friends and videos that take off do, right? They create something extremely novel using AI and it makes a great demo. It makes a great video and those get millions of views and at least one day of lots of downloads. But then the question is like, how do you kind of sustain that kind of download? Do you try to keep doing novel things like Mr. Beast, right? And keep trying to one up yourself, which is really hard. You could lean into authenticity, which is just like I think what you see a lot of influencers do. Like, I'm just sharing my life. I'm just sharing workout, and you kind of create that parasocial relationship, right? That hopefully can transfer into a product or a subscription or something like that. And, questionable how scalable that is, right? You have like folks like Lenny, who had the great newsletter, started from a very authentic place, has grown to 1 million now, and now he's starting to branch out to like a job board and who knows what other products. And I think he still carries that authenticity with him. But, does that scale at 10x or 100x? TV, it also depends on what your ambition is, something. But our bet is the money making part. And so I think the current meta is OnlyFans. I think the current meta is if you provide, people a way to make money on your platform, then they will market for you. And they will be the ones that are creative and be authentic or using AI or who knows what else, they're rolling the dice and you got thousands and millions of more dice being rolled. So you have a higher chance of the platform to be successful. And so I'm hoping, I think OnlyFans, that's one of their main kind of innovations. They've sold like basically a financial payment gateway for risque content, right? But then you have like an army of people that are motivated to kind of go and market. So even though it's still only the 1% that kind of make money in the long tail struggle, like OnlyFans as a platform has obviously immensely benefited. And I'm seeing the same across finance, except it's scattered, right? Like people have these paid Discords and these like letters and Patreons, etc. And it's all a very disjointed experience. And again, they're missing that trust factor, right? Like why the heck would I ever want to join your Telegram channel or whatever just because you posted a random, screenshot somewhere? But I've seen them putting in the work. And so if we can provide a trustworthy platform and an audience as well of people that want to go find other traders that they could talk to and follow their alerts, whatever, hopefully that's a match made in heaven, and that can help us grow, 10x, 100.
So you would sort of, on the one hand, be AfterHour is a thing that goes deeper into a specific part of Reddit in finance, but at the same time, you're also aggregating all of these things that would formerly be scattered across different Discords and Telegrams and providing one place where everything can potentially live.
Yeah, that's kind of like I call myself a internet sociologist. I would love to be a meme historian when I retire. But, just constantly observing how people use the internet and how these communities pop up and how people trying to make money, et cetera. Like, I feel like there's always opportunity when you see people doing things like 100 different ways. And so right now, like I said, finance, you still feel very stuck in the Web 1 days. There hasn't been a platform that's really kind of owned and made the whole thing better. Right? I mean, think about it. Think about like, the reason Facebook, I think one of the reasons Facebook won is because they centralized the profile. Before then you had like a Zynga and a Tumblr and a MySpace, and they all looked different. Versus, people kind of like it when there's just one place to do things and like they do it the right way. So I'm hoping AfterHour becomes that from finance.
Yeah, that's exciting. And where should people go to learn more about you, to learn more about AfterHour? Where can they find out all the exciting details?
Well, we do have a website. I got AfterHour.com. I'm very proud of that. And, you could read about the app and download the app that way. You can also just follow me on Twitter, on Reddit. I'm Kevin Shu everywhere, or Sir Jack a lot if you want to see more of the fun memes.
Wonderful.
And
okay,
I guess I'll plug in my video formats too. Recently, I've been creating more and more founder videos about building the app and other type of things. And so that's under AfterHour CEO. So if you look up AfterHour CEO on Instagram and TikTok, you'll see me dancing or whatever.
Well, now you know what I'm going to be doing after this interview. Coming into our lightning round, I'm going to throw some short questions at you on the future of tech and marketing. Don't think too hard. Go with your gut. Give us your first reaction. You can add a little bit if you'd like, or you can just move quickly to the next piece. Meme stocks or blue chip?
Well, right now we're entering into a small chip meme stock era. More risk on, yeah.
Community building or influencer marketing?
Community building by far. Influencers are charging way too much right now.
Bull market or bear market?
Stocks keep going up. It's a forever bull market.
Celebrity founder or anonymous Redditor?
Man, ideally both.
You have a secret Reddit account still that you've not revealed to the world.
I have a couple.
Wow. ETFs or individual stocks?
Individual stocks. If you know a little bit of something about something, I think it's okay to make an individual bet.
This is something I'm actually really fascinated by as a very non-educated stock person. It seems like 20 years ago, most everyone was doing individual stocks, and it made sense to go into ETFs to play the market. Now, increasingly, people are all in on ETFs, and I almost wonder if that starts to backfire when too many people are just buying ETFs.
Yes and no. Interesting podcast talking about how back in the boomer generation, that was the way. You would actually try to find stocks and do your research, and you felt like you were owning a piece of the company, and maybe you show up for shareholder meetings or whatever, right? And that doesn't exist anymore. It's also just way too much work for the average person to do any of that research. So ETFs and Vanguard, creating that concept in the 70s, kind of Gen X and millennials really took that to heart. And it's also like, it's not going to go down because you just have so many people passively every week, every month, buying into it, right? You have like these bots and robo advisors automatically buying into these ETFs. So like it's got enough momentum that it'll just keep going and should never really go down that much, despite depending on macro events and black swan events. But I think it's really just like I mean, people call stocks like educated gambling. People go into it for different reasons, and different growth targets or whatever, right? But I feel like if you looked in tech, you were very well aware of like NVIDIA and GPUs and like what was going on, right? And so I think that was like a very simple bet anyone could have made with 1, 2, 3, 5%. Just like, let me just buy NVIDIA. I think long term, I'm good at it. It's also not really a gamble because it's not going to go to zero. Or at least NVIDIA's not going to go to zero. My problem with the comparison to real gambling like blackjack is that it should go to zero. Like if you bet wrong, gamble is like it's fairly binary, right? You double it or you go to zero. And that's why I try to avoid options and penny stocks and biotech and crypto, because there are many stories of those just randomly you wake up and it goes to zero, right? Like the FDA rejected someone's drug proposal and then it goes to like zero almost. But NVIDIA, the worst case scenario is, I don't know, drops 10 or then 20%. Like, can you like hold, can you like stomach that for a little bit? And then like, will it ever go back up again? I feel like those are fairly easy things to think about.
User onboarding or retention?
Retention. Retention is super important. And daily usage is also really, really important.
Building that bathroom app use case. I love that way of thinking about it. Growth metrics or engagement metrics?
Both. I think both are critical. Very different, right? One's kind of, obviously to what grows and how it works, and engagement is more related to retention.
Awesome. Well, that is it. Thank you for joining me, Kevin. This has been an absolute delight.
Thank you.